Are you a healer that loves to heal but hates to run away? This might just be the build for you. Alright, so let's take a look at this Life Staff Greatsword build. Now, starting off with the armor, this is actually the same armor setup that I used with my Life Staff Void Gauntlet build, so I can definitely leave a link to that video down below, but we'll go over it really quick. So I am running full Rune Glass with the Arboreal Rune Glass, so we're getting the plus 2% damage per Rune Glass on each piece of armor. But what we're starting off with is we do have Fortifying Sacred Ground, still really great, Freedom Resilient, and you'll see across the board I'm still stacking Resilient, and then either Refreshing or Refreshing Evasion. I know most healers do go with Refreshing. I personally like Refreshing Evasion. I've gotten really used to it, the cooldown reduction and all of that with the Refreshing Evasion plus Refreshing Move. I've really gotten accustomed to it, but definitely if Refreshing works better for you, go that route. Like I said, you can see that I'm running a lot of Refreshing Evasion, Vigor, Invigorated, a lot of stuff to just kind of get the dots and some of that, exhaust and all that stuff off of me. And then for jewelry, again, Refreshing Evasion on the amulet and the earring with Refreshing Toast, Purifying Toast, and then we are running extra nature damage. So with this build, we are actually getting a 15 or approximately a 15% buff to our nature damage between the Rune Glass and the ring. For our life staff itself, I am still running the glowing life crystal staff. There are some other options as well, but with the refreshing move, divine embrace, and the blessed, all that, it works really, really well still for PvP situations. For my greatsword, this is currently what I have on. It's a plague strike, slowing rupture, full con greatsword. This works really, really well. The plague strikes is really nice, and then the slowing rupture is actually extremely nice because it allows for you to peel for yourself slightly. And then can help kind of catch some enemies out. The other option for a greatsword that I have also ran is this one right here. This one's a little bit more DPS focused with the attunement, vicious, and life stealing. I have ran this one, but I'm finding that I'm liking the slowing rupture being on the greatsword because it does apply quite a big slow. So as of right now, running with the slowing rupture, but you can definitely go more of a DPS route if you choose. I just didn't find as much for it. That is the gear that I am running for this build. Let's take a look at the attributes and mastery next. Taking a look at the attributes first, you can see that I do have a 40 con food rolling right now. But what I'm aiming for is I'm aiming for 150 con, everything else into focus. Now, a lot of healers are going to run 200 con. They are going to get that extra armor bonus and all of that. I have run 200 con in the past, but I've also run 150 quite a bit. Now, between positioning and really watching your surroundings, 150 has worked really, really well for me. I haven't really found that 200 has increased my personal survivability a whole lot. It's just kind of decreased my healing and some of my damage output. So personally, this is the route that I go. Now, if 200 works better for you, definitely go for it because some people just like having that little extra cushion of the extra HP, and that's totally fine. There's no sense changing that if it works for you. But 150 has worked for me. It's still working in the current meta as long as I am careful of, the way I'm using my abilities and everything, and paying attention to some of those fortify stacks. So that is what I do for attributes. Next, let's take a look at the life staff. Now with the life staff, this is a very, very similar build to my previous video, but I did make a couple changes after some discussions in the comments. I rethought a little bit of the build, and we did remove the sacred protection. I did actually do some testing on glowing focus because I wasn't sure, because it says buffs that you grant apply or last 20% longer. I did wonder, is beacon itself a buff? So I did test that, and it does not increase the time of beacon, which I was kind of hoping it would. It would be kind of cool if they just maybe reduced that percentage, but then had it apply to beacon, so you could maybe stack it on top of that radiance blessing, but you cannot. So we just removed it since we're not running orb of protection. Instead, we are running protector's touch. That 15% fortify, although it doesn't seem like much because fortify has changed, it has helped me with like bows and fire staffs shooting me. It does seem to make a difference because that 15% increase in armor is pretty nice. It does give you just that tiny bit of survivability, so I have been running it. And then we did switch over to running the haste with our beacon, mainly because we don't really have any other perks that would be more worthwhile at this point, so we went with that. So that is a life staff build. I'm not going to go too in depth into each perk. I'll definitely link my other video though, so you can take a look. Next, let's take a look at the Greatsword. Now, with this Greatsword build, we do have one perk that is going to be completely useless to us because of having to build on the Onslaught tree. But as you can see, we actually don't run anything on the Onslaught tree that triggers Onslaught stance. That is where we have one wasted perk. Now, what we have is we have the Heavy Blade, so our charge heavy attacks have 15% armor penetration. This is our wasted perk. So Keen Posture, after gaining Onslaught stance, your next attack within 5 seconds has a 100% critical hit chance. Since we don't have Onslaught stance set up on this build, this is kind of useless, or is useless. But the thing is if we were to go with Swift Onslaught, it would be just as useless because you gain a 20% haste for 5 seconds when hitting a target with an Onslaught free ability. So both of these perks are useless for us. So I just kind of picked one. And then we go down to critical comeback. So become energized by landing a critical hit and regain 5 stamina and 5% base health per second for 5 seconds. So landing a crit isn't too difficult, so it definitely does help getting some of that health back, some stam, all of that. Next, we have the Crush the Weak perk. Critical hit chance is increased by 10% when attacking foes with an active debuff. So with our Greatsword that we have with the slowing rupture and all that, if we hit someone with that, they are now slowed, and we're doing 10% more, or 10% higher critical hit chance against that target. And then the last perk, which I really like on this side, is Step and Strike. So after dodging, gain a 10% power for the next 3 hits within 10 seconds. So that's a really easy empowerment that you can get, and you're dodging a lot, especially in light armor, so it works out really well to always have a 10% empowerment kind of coming back to us. Next, looking at the Defiance stance side, the 3 abilities we're running are all 3 Defiance abilities. So we do have Calamity Counter all the way down. Roaring Rupture, we actually avoided doing the Adaptive Rupture because we don't really need to push people away. We're obviously not going to be pulling them since we don't have Onslaught stance. But the push, really, I haven't found like it's overly useful. Definitely you can try running it though if you see that it's helping you. But I find that sometimes you're going to mess up other people's abilities and stuff using it, so I just don't use it. And I haven't really found a need for it with this build. For a Steadfast Strike, we do work this all the way down because we get a little bit of the healing, some lifesteal back from it, and then the cooldown reduction as well. So typically I'm going to use Steadfast Strike either to catch someone by, hitting them with it, it'll stagger them, all that. Or I'm going to use it because let's say I used my Calamity Counter and my Roaring Rupture, and I want to get those back faster. I'm going to try to hit someone with that Steadfast Strike and get that 20% cooldown reduction on. So that's what I run for abilities. For our passive perks, I went with the Wary Posture. So again, once we enter Defiant Stance, we then get the 25% increase in armor. So it's kind of just a nice cushion room for us. Again, Fortify is not as strong as it once was. Still very nice to have 25% more armor though. Blade Honing, so base damage is increased by 3% for each Greatsword buff on you. So we do get, like the empowerment, stuff like that. So you are able to stack a decent amount of the buffs and stack some damage with it. I do run Unflinching Blade, so then charge heavy attacks have grit and inflict bleeding. So it's just more damage, and having grit is really nice. And the last perk that I think is absolutely amazing for this build, and this is the one perk that you absolutely do need to have if you're running this build, and that is the Faultless Defender. Reduces the attacker's stamina damage dealt by 50% when blocking attacks after just raising your guard or with guard point. And then it also inflicts a rend if blocking with that. So what that means is if you look at the Path of Defiance, after completing any ability in Defiance tree, enter Defiant Stance for 10 seconds. Defiant Stance has the following properties: damage taken reduced by 15%, outgoing damage reduced by 15%. So that's fine. We're taking less damage, doing less damage. Guard point. Block incoming attacks while charging heavy attacks, right? So what that means is once you enter Defiant Stance, you want to start throwing heavies out, because with this perk, unflinching blade, we have grit. So now you've got grit while you're swinging. On top of that, you also are blocking because of guard point. So that's where Faultless Defender, any of those attacks that you're taking while you're winding up a heavy, that reduces the stam damage by 50%. It's a huge reduction in stam damage. So you can actually take quite a few hits, block every single one while inflicting a rend on them, and then you're not taking hardly any damage, and they are. So it's a really, really good way to play this defensively while also still being able to attack. Now, I've tried this with a DPS build, and with a DPS build, the Onslaught tree definitely has its uses. For this use, where it's more of a defensive deal, you're just trying to survive, but also like fight back a bit, it works really, really well. So this is very similar also to the way I run my tanking build. My tanking build, I make a few changes because I do have some onslaught stuff like that. But for the most part, this is what I run for my tanking build as well, and it's worked great. So again, this is my Greatsword layout. This is how I've been running it. You do have one wasted perk, which I know kind of sucks to say that you have a wasted perk, but all the other perks that you get because of that wasted perk, I think are definitely worth it. But if you do change it up, please let me know in the comments if you've changed something and it's working for you. I'm always interested to hear what you think. But yeah, let's take a look at some of the abilities and just kind of do an overview of the build itself. Okay, so there's not a whole lot to go over with this build. We'll go over the life staff really quick. There's not much to it. It's a pretty straightforward build. But with the refreshing evasion, I'll burn some cooldowns here. And as you can see, with that refreshing evasion, and you mix in some of the lights, you do get some pretty good cooldown reduction. So that works pretty good. So with the Greatsword, again, there's not a whole lot to it as far as going over it. It's pretty straightforward, but I'll show you the cooldown reduction with it. So let's say we do that. So you can see you get quite the cooldown reduction, and then with our refreshing evasion, as we're dodging around, be able to get all that cooldown reduction back. So a lot of it comes down to how you're using your steadfast strike. Again, sometimes you're going to be chasing someone and you want to reach, grab them, and rip them back. Other times you're going to be using that for your cooldown reduction. Just kind of depends, but paying attention to your defiant stance is really, really important with this build. So you want to make sure that, like, let's say you switch to your Greatsword. If you're going to start taking some damage, you could even preemptively throw an ability if you really wanted to. Which would allow you to go in there taking 15% less damage immediately, which I have done before. You know, you can even just go like that, and then when you enter the fight, enter with a steadfast strike, and then you're going to get some cooldown reduction. And if you can just kind of keep stuff staggered with your abilities and not burn through your abilities too quickly, you will actually be able to keep your defiant stance going pretty much the entire time. So, see, paying attention at the bottom there, we have 3 seconds left. We'll do one of these, get Defiant Stance back. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a 10-second cooldown, or a 10-second time on your Defiant Stance. And you're definitely going to get cooldowns back in that time, so you really can just keep your Defiant Stance going the entire time. Just need to plan accordingly with it. But that is kind of the Greatsword build with the life staff. It's quite a bit different from what we used to run back when Brimstone Sands first came out and I first came up with my first Greatsword build. So this is quite a bit different. It is quite a change from what I was running before, but I'm actually enjoying it much better, especially for the current meta. Alright, next I've got a clip or two that I will show you of the build in action and no PR. You can kind of see how I'm working it, and if you want to see more of it, you can definitely stop by a stream and ask some questions on it, or just kind of see it in action. But let's take a look at a little bit of gameplay from this build. right, that is going to do it for today's video. So thank you to everyone who is watching today. I do really appreciate the support and everyone seeing it. If it did help you out, please drop it a like, or if you just liked the video in general, it does help out the channel a lot. If you'd like to see more videos and get updates on more videos to come, please drop a sub and you will get notified when new videos are posted. I do stream on Twitch throughout the week as well, so if you do want to stop by and say hello or ask any questions about really anything, you're more than welcome to stop by, and we would love to have you by a stream. But for today's video, that is going to do it for me, so until next time, I'll see everyone later.